and welcome to a very special Dana White Contender Series, episode 2 of season 3. This is UFC Addicts, and my name is Aaron, and I'm here as always with my co-host Leyton, and we're here to break down for this special podcast the Dana White Contender Series. So, as I said, we're in episode 2. Before jumping in here, we will cover a little bit of episode 1, a little bit of controversies and contracts signed out or handed out. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Leyton. I somehow found my way through that. It was kind of competent. What up, buddy?
What's up? Okay, so before we get into week 1 and the fights that happened, shout out to Leon Shabazian for subscribing to the channel. We didn't get to see that fight, so hopefully that fight's rescheduled.
Yeah, we hope we didn't make Leon sick with our analysis of not picking him. It was not a disrespect thing.
We were
I'm pretty sure
respectful.
Yeah, we were definitely respectful, giving a good chance. That was probably the second best fight on the card, so it's too bad that went through. But Brock Weaver has been already announced to fight, I think, in week 8 or so. And it's not against Leon Shabazian. So I'm not sure if they're going to want Leon to kind of prove his worth a little before getting back later in the season or what. But that fight itself won't happen. But a little bit about the fights from week 1. Overall impression, I'd say they should be pretty happy with the level of the fights. I don't think any of them, maybe you could say the Hannah Goldie and Callie Robbins fight was not great, but that was not great going in. So we got kind of what we expected from that fight. But I'd say the other 3 fights are worthy of contracts. We'll just go in order here. We'll start with the first fight, which we started out season 3 with a incorrect pick of Alton Meeks. Both of us picked him. The first couple minutes, he looked pretty good. He got a couple body lock takedowns, looked pretty heavy on top, looked to be way bigger, way better shape as he was coming out. I know I felt pretty good with my pick. But Jorgen fought the way that Dana White wants you to fight on this Contender Series, and that's with reckless abandonment, basically. It's not fighting the best fight necessarily, but also Jorgen got the results. He had the flying knee and then landed 2 leg kicks, and the second leg kick put him down. Yeah. So
everyone looking at that fight pretty much saw the same thing. We saw a guy who had much better credentials in wrestling with Alton Meeks and a huge size advantage. So, you know, we all pretty much saw the same thing, and we knew Jorgen was a striker, but we thought the difference would be the wrestling. So credit to him. What was he, like a plus 700?
I think Alton kept rising, and what we'll see with a lot of these. So we won't have the odds here when we're breaking it down, since the odds come out only a couple days before the fight usually. But what we're seeing with a lot of these odds is that the favorite, it's just getting skewed with almost all the fights to where there's opportunities to make money. I'll definitely say that. 1 underdog came in or 2?
1 out of 4. I took the parlay Goldie, Brendan Goldie and Jamie Pickett, and I got the main event wrong with Jamie Pickett, but I was kind of pleased with his performance. There was times in that fight where you thought, is Jamie Pickett going to get a TKO here? But
let's just go into that fight. And one of the couple head scratchers of the night for me was Pula Haley getting a contract. I don't agree.
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
He came forward and looked for the knockout, and that's what Dana wants to see. But showed holes in his game.
He showed a lot of holes. He looked like a very poor man's version of who did I say he looked like? The other Hawaiian guy. I'm totally blanking on his name. Brad Tavares.
Oh,
A very poor man's Brad Tavares. He's only got 5 fights. I'm not sure what the rush is to sign him to a contract in the very deep middleweight division, where there aren't easy fights. They're going to put him against someone like Tim Boach for his first fight. Good luck. Because Jamie Pickett, while he did look good, was purely in there to fight defensively.
Exactly.
Not one point in that fight that Jamie Pickett put the pressure. Not at many points. There were a couple points he did. But most of that fight, he didn't put the pressure on Pula Haley. And he was using some pretty rudimentary ground defense to keep his arm locked and keep him from landing ground and pound. So I think Pua Haley maybe a development deal, like similar to Greg Hardy deal, where we see him a couple more times. But Dana White seemed to have his mind made up about Pua Haley before the fight. He gave him the main event spot over Brendan Loughnane and Algeo. And then he gave him a contract right after telling Brendan Loughnane that the way he fought in going to a decision was not getting him a contract.
Mm-hmm. That was an amazing fight. That was the true main event. And in all honesty, both of those guys deserved the contract because Bill Algeo, just showing the toughness he showed, you deserve a contract.
Those knees were really awkward to deal with, and a couple times Loughnane's head movement moved him right into those knees.
Mm-hmm.
He rocked him several times. We said before the fight that was the best fight of the night. Mm-hmm. It ended up being the best fight of the night, and neither guy got a contract.
Yeah. I believe you shared a post to our betting group on Facebook where Brendan basically said he was pissing blood after the fight. Dana said, you leave it all in there. Well, that proves he did, man. He put on a great performance.
For an MMA promoter, though, to tell a guy that him shooting for a double leg and securing a takedown was the wrong move is troubling. It sets a precedent for the whole sport. Mm-hmm. And now you can have all these casuals, all these idiots who cite Dana White's own words and say, oh, wrestling is not part of the game. So the best fighters of all time all have wrestling as a major component in their game. Mm-hmm. John Jones, GSP, Matt Hughes, however far back you want to go.
And even current champions now. Look at Usman.
Yeah, Anderson Silva's the only guy I can think of who didn't have a huge component of his game be wrestling. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure there's others, but either way, like for neither of those guys, both of those guys should have had a contract. Neither of those guys get a contract. Brendan Loughnane, you make your own decisions, but Loughnane passed up going to PFL this season, where I think he would have made a lot of noise in that 55 tournament. Uh-huh. And so either way, it was a notable first week. This is not the UFC Contender Series. This is Dana White's Contender Series. None of these guys are in the UFC. Uh-huh. None of them. So they can't fight like they're in the UFC and just securing a takedown.
Yeah. Dana wants to see killers. He said it 3 times in a row.
Yeah, as much as I want to disagree with him, this is Dana White's Contender Series here.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is, kind of. And I can say from my end, it affected some of my predictions for at least the methods of victory here. I think it is going to result in guys putting more of an effort forward to make a finish and make an impact because they do realize, and this isn't news. I mean, Ricky Simone won a very impressive decision on his season of the Contender Series, but it was a decision, and he used a lot of wrestling. He had to go and get 2 more wins in LFA. This is not a new thing. There's more eyes on the Contender Series now than ever, so you have more voices with the Contender Series more now than ever. Us doing a podcast, I'm looking at it closer than ever. But yeah, either way, there's a couple guys on this card I really like. Actually, most of the guys, there's only one guy of my guys I'm breaking down, I'm super not impressed with. So, sorry, Hannah Goldie and Kelly Robbins, we're not covering any more of your fight. I'm ready to move in, and you ready to go at 135?
Yes. So 4 fights on week 1. We disagreed twice. Let's see how many disagreements for this card. First fight, Miles Johns versus Richie Santiago. And I'll be breaking down Richie Santiago. Comes into this fight, 7 wins, 1 loss as a pro. He's lost a lot of fights in his amateur career, but since turning pro, he's basically won a few. This guy is pretty weak. From what I've seen in his fights, his combos are very weak. He likes to jab, calf kick, and, his jabs and calf kicks just look weak. Just not really a powerful guy. I see a massive speed advantage for Miles Johns and a power advantage. And Richie Santiago, I believe he only has submission wins, apart from 1 TKO he got in his amateur career against a guy 1-5. So, based in my opinion of watching his fights, you just avoid getting taken down, basically. But I even see Miles Johns getting his own takedowns and just beating Richie Santiago pretty much everywhere this fight goes. So I'll take Miles Johns via TKO in round number 1.
Okay. I will be breaking down Miles Chapo Johns out of I mean, you're fighting on Dana White's Contender Series. What camp are you going to fight out for me to become an Ultimate fan? 4 to 7.
Yeah.
Of course. And that's where he fights out of. He's 7-0, 1 TKO, and 2 subs. So four of the fights going the distance. Again, one of those going actually 5 rounds and being a split decision win in his last fight for the LFA Championship. And I don't have problem with decisions early on. I think they're actually quite helpful in being able to help me gauge you as a fighter. So I'll be honest. Miles, in LFA, it wasn't for the title, actually. He was in bind for the bantamweight title shot, and then he broke his hand. So he ended up giving up his spot on that to Chase Kenny, who went on to win that fight and now got somewhat a gift of a win in his UFC debut. But either way, Miles Johns on a similar level to that, I think. He's definitely hungry. He's well-rounded, very well-spoken guy. Also, I've been able to watch some interviews with James Lynch, who interviews just about everybody, it seems like. Every time I look up an interview on YouTube, it's that James Lynch guy. So shout out to him because he gets these guys who aren't even on the Contender Series yet and really allows you to get a gauge on the mental capacity of the kid and the intelligence. And Miles seems like an intelligent guy, seems pretty quick. I do see this being a stand-up war. And I think the only guy who's going to be able to take down the other is Miles if he chooses to. I see both guys in each other's faces. And I think Johns is going to be faster and sharper. He has better wrestling. And I have a round 2 TKO for Miles as well. So I agree with you. Also, looking at the record of the guys Miles faced, you're looking at 8-5, 6-2, 11-3, 5-0, 7-2.
So better competition too.
Yeah, he's been fighting great competition. LFA, as many people who are familiar with them, they know that's a huge pipeline for the UFC. And yeah, he's got a variety. He's got some round 2 finishes. He's got a round 3 finish. If he does finish Santiago here in round 1, it'd be his first round 1 finish. But I'm not saying that necessarily doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm. So I've got round 1. You've got round 2. We've got no odds. But if you had to gauge where the odds are going to be, what would you predict?
I mean, I'm going to be using a little exaggerated just based on how exaggerated they got last week. I'd say 300 to 400 minus for Miles.
I'm going to say minus 5. I'm very confident in this one.
This is such a different way to predict odds than like a normal MMA.
Massively.
Like UFC card. I mean, like imagine saying minus 500, just wouldn't. Even if these two guys were fighting on the beginning of a card, you wouldn't. Mm-hmm. So it's very odd.
We've got it much better than boxing. You see boxing and it's like minus 3,000. It's like, really? 2019 boxing and we have that competition?
Yeah, and Sufa wants to get into boxing, which we will not be breaking down on this channel if they do.
The only boxing we'll ever be breaking down is inside the octagon. That's a fact.
Yeah. Well said. And so, we do not have any odds for this as they don't come out till pretty much right before the fight. So I'll move us on to our next fight. This is at middleweight.
Yes.
Michael the Don Lombardo and Kyle Daukaus. I'll say Daukaus. Kyle Daukaus. I will be breaking down Michael Lombardo. And this is the guy who, when I was giving my little teaser who I'm not that impressed with, this is the guy I'm not impressed with. Who I'm breaking. He's 4-1. He's got 1 TKO. He doesn't have a ton of experience, but almost all of it is on YouTube. And because all of them do go pretty much the distance, a lot of 19 to 20-minute videos. He's fine. He's a wrestler mostly. He's got some okay ground and pound. Not much else. Doesn't look for submissions from what I've seen. I think that often Lombardo's kind of lazy and ducking his head in and leaving his head and neck in awkward positions on his takedown entries. And I think with a guy like Daukaus, who's known for his subs, he's got, I think, 3 Darce chokes and a couple of rear naked chokes.
3 Darce and 3 rear naked.
Yeah. he looks for the neck, and I think Lombardo is a little bit slow and leaves it in there. So I'll say Daukaus by either a sub in round 1 or a decision. But I'll take Kyle Daukaus.
Nice breakdown. Okay, so Kyle Daukaus comes into this fight 6-0 as a pro. Like you said, all 6 wins coming via submission. Now, there is a fight I believe he did lose, because I've watched pretty much all of his fights. He fought a guy called Elia Gaboli. And if you watch that fight, Elia basically had him TKO'd towards the end of round 1. It was that bad. Like, Kyle kind of got up at one point and went to throw a combo and even like just fell back to the floor. He didn't even get hit. Like, he was that out of it. But you know, he goes on to win that via submission, so you could say that it shouldn't have been called. But watching, you know, towards the end of round 1, there would have been a few refs in the UFC that definitely would have stopped that fight. So yeah, you're quite disappointed with Michael Lombardo. Your breakdown on him was, in my opinion, pretty spot on. The only positive I'd really give him is basically what you gave him. Primarily, he's a grappler, and you know, a fairly strong one would be the only positive I'd give him. But if you're looking at this fight on the feet, I don't see much from Michael Lombardo. And Kyle Daukaus just has that style where he comes at you in the later rounds as well. And he's also a training partner of Bill Algeo, who was on week 1. And you said before the podcast, you said to me, you feel some people are going to fight a little bit differently because of how, you know, Dana responded after the 4 fights. If there's one guy I can tell you who isn't going to fight differently, it's Kyle. Like he said in an interview, I don't care about the contract. The win is the most important thing for me. Decision, submission, TKO, whatever I have to do to get the win is what I'm going to do. So he's putting win before contract. And that's something that really swayed me to take Kyle. So yeah, I'll take Kyle via... I'm going to say decision.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm actually looking over Lombardo, and I guess he has 8-1, and apparently he's had 4 straight finishes.
Yeah.
So once again, good old Sherdog coming through with 4-1 on Sherdog with 1 TKO. He's gotten a 3 finishes by strikes, and he finished his last fight with a choke. But
I believe he trades at ATT as well.
So he is at ATT in Florida. And the record of those last 4 opponents is 1-0, 2-1, 3-10-1, and 6-6. So, we'll see. I mean, it looks like he had a couple more fights here than I realized, but yeah, overall, I mean, he could be a pretty effective Ian Heinisch type of guy, though. Also, I mean, we've seen Ian Heinisch, who even on the Contender series, Ian and Heinisch didn't look that good. And that guy's just a bowling ball of an opponent now. You can't keep him off you, and he's getting better by the fight. So, I mean, Lombardo has a style that when it's effective, it's tough to stop. So,
if you had to predict the odds?
Yeah, I would say it would be with Daukaus, like, -2 or 3.
I was thinking about -170 towards 2. So yeah. +1, 160, maybe +2 in some places for Lombardo.
Yeah. I think that probably will be it, but who knows? After we see the odds, it may not even be worth guessing for the following week because they're kind of all over the place. I mean, we never would have predicted Alton Meeks 1,000 odds, -1,000.
I mean, I said to you before the card, like, that line is way off. It never changed my pick, but the line was crazy. Okay, so moving on to the third fight. We have Zane versus Justin Gonzales. And I'll let you take it away with Zane.
Yep, I will break down Mr. Zane. First of all, Justin Gonzales' picture on Tapology looks like Justin Gaethje. Just saying. I doubt he fights like Justin Gaethje. I will be breaking down Zach God's Warrior Zane. The 29-year-old is 12-7 with 8 subs and 2 TKOs. His record at one point was 4-7. He's been on an 8-fight win streak with a lot of finishes. The dude is like the definition of a Hawaiian scrapper in every sense of the word. He's got decent stand-up, but the real threat, as you can see from the record, is the submission game. He's really relentless in chaining together different attempts and having good success, at least on guys who are making their MMA debuts, which is one of the fights that I got to watch was against the guy with 0-0. Mm-hmm. But, again, he hasn't fought the best competition, and he gets hit quite a bit. So I think that Gonzales wins this. I think that he may kind of take a safer approach and get a decision win, though. I'm not seeing a TKO or a finish from Gonzales, but I'll take Justin Gonzales to get kind of a standard win here, use some good wrestling, just have a more MMA game overall than his opponent and get the win. So I'll take Gonzales by decision.
Decent. Okay, so Justin Gonzales comes into this fight 9-0 as a pro. One thing I noticed pretty quickly about this guy is he's had 5 main events in his 9 pro fights. So 5 5-minute rounds 5 times, and he's gone the distance twice. So he's already gone 25 minutes twice. And he's just a very well-rounded guy. Like you said, good boxing, very strong in the clinch. I've even seen him use judo in the clinch. Just a well-rounded guy. I believe he's the number one featherweight in Colorado. I could be wrong, but I believe he is. Like you said, Zane 4-7 at one point, but on a decent win streak. And he's just a bit of a madman, really. Like, he'll throw spinning stuff. He'll stay in your face. He'll try to sub you. Looking at like the fundamentals, I'd say Justin Gonzales has better fundamentals. So Zane's gonna, be the same Zane I've seen in pretty much all of his pro fights, which is gonna leave him open to eating shots because Justin Gonzales does have good fundamentals. He has very decent boxing, and he just looks like a very promising guy. Only 9-0. The competition hasn't been great, but you can only fight who's put in front of you. So yeah, decent fight. I'm going to take Justin Gonzales to get a TKO in round number 2.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, they have Gonzales ranked as the 6th overall featherweight not signed with UFC right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, he looks very promising, man. Like, very well-rounded.
He's fought some decent guys. I mean, he's fought a guy with 26 fights, and he went to a decision with him, so that's good. He followed that up with an 8-1 guy an 8-0 guy who he knocked out in 2 minutes. So he's fought a couple guys who are undefeated. He's used to a little bit of the spotlight. This will be a different level of it, but regardless, but I think Zane is gonna be the kind of guy that if he wins the fight gets a contract. I don't see
he has that style for sure. That style Dana's looking for, that madness. He throws the spinning stuff, and he looks the part too.
Yeah, to be 4-7 and still continue to fight and believe in yourself and, kind of build your record back up, regardless of who you're facing. You're the 4-7 guy. People are expecting to have your name added to the record when you're that. So
exactly.
I think that's going to be a really fun fight. The less fun it is, the more likely Gonzales wins. So maybe that's unfair, but either way, we'll move us on to our next fight. I'm very excited about this one. I believe this guy's making his return for his second fight in the Contender Series in Alton Cunningham.
Yep.
Alton the Bowman Cunningham, and he is fighting Tony Johnson. This is at light heavyweight. I will be breaking down Mr. Alton Cunningham, who indeed did fight Bevan Lewis on the Contender Series, and Bevan Lewis, believe it or not, was clinching, and Bevan Lewis ended up landing some actual damage and putting Alton away with knees to give him his first loss, actually. So Alton's getting a second chance in the Contender Series, which I think pretty guys do pretty well in their second chances in the Contender Series, not including Jamie Pickett from last week. But as I said, he lost to Bevan Lewis with those knees. This is definitely a winnable fight here against a 36-year-old in Tony. I think Alden looks to keep this on the feet and land some bombs early, put him away. I also think he could look to wrestle if this fight gets carried late, but I'm going to take Alden Cunningham to get a TKO in round 2, maybe even a round 1 TKO. I think he's going to come out and be aggressive and look to push the 36-year-old. Alden's 25. He's entering his prime. I think that he's fought some okay guys, but I think that fight against Bevan he'll gain a lot from that. It's about a year later. So I'll take, Alton by TKO round 2.
Nice. Okay, so Tony Johnson comes into this fight 7-2 as a pro. Just listen to this. Okay, so this is the history of Tony Johnson as an MMA fighter. He fought twice in 2007. He fought 3 times in 2008. Once in 2011, once in 2013, once in 2017, and once in 2018. So I don't know if he has like the worst manager of all time, or he's just half in and half out with the sport. That's not the most strange thing here. Okay, he used to be a welterweight. Okay, so he returned to MMA after his fight in 2013. He had a 4-year layoff. Returning in 2017, he is now a light heavyweight. So, he's had 2 fights at light heavyweight. To say he's gone up 2 weight classes in 4 years, I can only assume that wasn't the plan. Like, you had a 4-year layoff, you got back into MMA, and now you're a light heavyweight. It's pretty weird.
Why is he here?
Honestly, I think they want Alton Cunningham to have a really good second fight in the Contender series.
That's how I took it.
Yeah. So, looking at Alton's first fight at the Contender series against Bevan Lewis, that's got to be his worst performance yet. He really didn't land much at all, and Bevan Lewis just looked like he was going to be a prospect in the UFC. And I'm not trying to trash Bevan Lewis too much, because he still can go on to win the next 4 or 5 fights depending on who he's fighting. But Bevan Lewis looked like a star that night. He was landing knees, elbows, uppercuts, hooks, leg kicks, body kicks. He was landing everything right up until he finished him in round 1. So yeah, looking at this fight, I have to take Alton Cunningham. He's naturally a 205er. He's a powerful guy. He's a quick guy. And since that Contender Series fight, he's had 2 fights where he's gotten a finish. So yeah, I'd have to assume that he wins this one. I'll take him via TKO in round number 1.
All right. So that is, what is that, 3 for 3 on the agreement, or 4 for 4 on agreements?
Uh-huh.
All right. We are going into the 5th fight, which we weren't sure was going to happen. But this is, what weight is this at?
170.
Okay, 170, sorry. Between Miguel Caramel Thunder Baez, almost missed that, sorry. And Victor, I think it's just, Victor Calavera Reyna. Not as fun. I will be breaking down Caramel Thunder, sorry, Mr. Miguel Baez, which is a pretty solid fighter name. He is 6'2", so he's a little bit tall for the division. He's 6-0 with 5 KOs. He's got good size for welterweight, as I said, and he's got a legit background in competing in jiu-jitsu tournaments. And has so far often uses grappling to stand and throw hard hooks and leg kicks at his opponent. He's got good defensive wrestling and grappling. He could really stop a guy, and honestly, I think he can stop a guy with his hands. So far, he's shown he could. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I find he strikes too much back to the cage, so that could be a factor, especially with the Contender Series being the smaller cage. Victor could really look to push the pace and push his back up against the cage, and sometimes Miguel is too willing to throw those hooks as he's on his back foot. But I do think that I think it could be close, but I think a big difference will be Miguel's grappling and ability to I think he will actually probably have to use his grappling for a first time in this fight. And I'm actually taking him to get his first submission. So we'll take Miguel Baez for a second round submission after Victor maybe even gets him down and he maybe sweeps him or subs him from his back. So I'll take Miguel Baez to get a submission in round 2. So I got a lot of finishes coming on this card, I think.
Nice.
I think Dana's made it clear what he wants to see on the Contender Series, and I think that with these matchups, a lot of these fighters are going to be all obliged. So, second round submission for Mr. Baez.
Nice. Okay, so Victor Reyna comes into this fight 10 wins, 3 losses as a pro. His best competition has been against Kevin Holland, where he got subbed in the first round. From what I've seen from Victor Reyna is, poor takedown defense. He kind of plots forward and usually gets leg kicked a lot. I'd expect Miguel to be the better grappler here. You mentioned his grappling credentials. I've seen him in a few jiu-jitsu competitions where he's looked very decent. And just more well-rounded from Miguel, to be honest. Like, he's winning by TKO, and I see a very decent grappler. Victor Reyna normally wins by TKO. At some point, he finds a TKO. But in his last fight, which was a no contest, he was TKO'd pretty quickly on the feet. I'm not sure why that was a no contest. I'm assuming the guy got popped for steroids or something like that. He didn't look like he was on steroids, but yeah, that's a no contest, and he was brutally knocked out. So yeah, I believe Miguel is the more well-rounded guy. He's winning all of his fights by TKO, and I see a very decent grappler. So yeah, we're going to agree perfect on this one. I'm going to take a round 2 sub for Miguel.
Sweet.
So there we go. 5 fights and 5 perfect agreements.
Yep, we went 500 on week 1. So
yeah, there we go. Decent.
Yeah.
And what's your fight of the night?
I think that Zane and Gonzales. I'll say Zane and Gonzales.
Okay. I'm gonna take Michael Lombardo and Kyle, because I think if it gets into like round 2 and 3, Michael may be forced to fight on the feet, and that could turn into a crazy little war. So I'll take that one.
I know we don't do fight of the nights, but the first week's fight of the night didn't get a contract. So
yeah, he wants killers only.
Maybe being a fight of the night isn't a good thing, because
yeah, unless you get a finish, or don't shoot for a takedown in the last 10 if you're fight of the night.
Don't compete in MMA then. Like, again, Dana White should really just go into kickboxing, I guess. Like, this is crazy. MMA is mixed martial arts, and wrestling is one of the fundamentals. But
I was
either way.
I was watching a video of Dana White a few days ago when he was training for the Ortiz fight. He looked so small. He didn't look fat at all. It's hilarious.
Yep. Yeah, he's let the money get to him. Hopefully the money comes in for us soon, and we can all get fat too, and you can talk about how fat we got from when we started. But anyways, if you listen to this breakdown, we appreciate you. You can enter the giveaway this week. We have 5 fights, so if you get a clean sweep and get the main event, if you get a clean sweep on it, then we'll get you some Fight Pass or some ESPN Plus. So enter the breakdown. Go ahead and put your picks down below, and enjoy the Contender Series. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and with the UFC, the main card for the UFC, with Chan Sung Jung and Renato Moicano. So we got fights on fights. We got the bare knuckle fights happening. Artem Lobov is fighting Paulie Mangano. Even Bellator. So, and PFL is coming back soon too. So it's not a bad time to be a fight fan. But until the next event here, which I believe will be is the UFC the next thing we're recording? UFC?
Yeah, Minnesota. My boy Vince Pichel is fighting on that card.
Shout out to Vince and others, but that will be JDS and Ngannou. But I don't got much more to say. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate you all, and peace out.
Yep, appreciate you all, guys. Peace.